if you remember, I don't know, actually you didn't, I'm not sure you came to our event in November when I made everyone do their 20-second, their 30-second pitch.
Right.
Yeah, but I made even the investors, and they couldn't do it. They were stammering, and they were like, "Oh, on and on," and so they realized how difficult it was.
20 seconds is a lot of pressure.
Yes, well, it was 30 seconds, but
Yeah.
and I would tell them when the 30 seconds were over. But anyway, so tell me, this nonprofit. When did you start your nonprofit?
Yeah. So just to kind of like give you, I'll just take like a step back just to kind of give you the origin story. So,
Right, you were at the UN. What
yeah,
happened because you were at the UN?
yeah. So basically what happened is that, as you know, I've been a mentor and coach for like, many years. And because of that, the organizers of the United Nations, knew this, and they also knew that I had worked with at-risk youth by partnering with New York State Department of Labor, and they were having a summit on how to alleviate homelessness, and they said, "Can you come and speak on that, especially in light of what you've done with working with at-risk youth?" So I said, "Yeah, sure, great, I'd love to do it." And then what happened as an outcome of speaking at the United Nations is that many governments from a lot of the African countries that were present there reached out to me and said that they wanted my help with solving child homelessness in their country. So the countries that reached out to me were Nigeria and Malawi. Uh,
Okay.
and I, met with them at their, embassy and stuff, which is near the United Nations. And they were like very keen to explore this. So currently, I'm in the process of putting together this public-private consortium partnership type thing, which will embark on this really big task. And one of the things is like that happened like on the side, and then I've always been really big on mentoring and coaching, and I figure that now is as good as any time for me to have a nonprofit that's kind of focused on just that. So the nonprofit Bright Now is focused on mentoring kids in various NGOs, as well as consulting the NGO with any kind of help that the NGO needs, which could be either reducing wastage, streamlining operations, as well as any sort of outreach, including donor outreach. So that's something that, again, that's something that I have done like previously, and figured that this could be like an interesting sort of suite of services that we could offer, which could help both sides of it. And that's what launched, that's what kind of like, let's say, instigated the creation of Bright Now. And then, so Bright Now, as of now, has, I think we have like sort of two active projects. One project is an NGO in India called Unbound Futures. And Unbound Futures is, they're in a very remote part of the northeast of India. They're on the border of China, Nepal, and West Bengal. So it's in the state of West Bengal, and it's a very isolated part. It's in the hills, and infrastructure, has not quite reached there yet. In fact, the woman that runs it told me that only last year is when they got broadband internet for the very first time ever in their life, and I was like, what? Like, we take the internet for granted so much here, to the extent that even if there's a second of outage, we're like in panic mode, DEFCON 5, and there, of course, I guess they didn't know what the internet was, or at least couldn't access it as easily as we do. And now internet has come, and it really is giving people a lot of hope. So that's one project that we're currently working with. We're helping them strategize their business plan, as well as once they have a business plan, they could then ask either investors or donors for money with their project, because they want to make a campus, and they want the campus to be self-contained campus. Both, it'll have a hostel, it'll have classes, it'll have a computer lab, it'll have a terrace which will have one or two satellite dishes for access both to television as well as for internet, like satellite based internet, especially if the whatever internet that's available there goes down. Because in India, as in many, developing countries, there could be outage caused by anything. It could be because somebody just decided that there shouldn't be internet and they just chop down the pole. That could happen, or there's an electrical outage, and that could happen too. So they're trying to make it as self-contained as possible. So that's something that we're currently helping them with. And then the second project is the one in Malawi, the one that I just told you about, where I'm putting together this private public partnership to embark on solving child homelessness in Malawi. And the idea is that once this works in our country, we can then essentially white label it and roll it out across any country, whether any country in the continent or any country in the world. That's the, ultimate goal.
So, I don't know if I ever mentioned to you, but I used to be on the board of Care for the Homeless, which provide medical services to homeless people, and they would send medical professionals out to help them wherever they are, which obviously is not possible at the moment. How does the effort in Malawi, how does it actually solve homelessness for children?
Right.
Because in the US, solving homelessness, our discussion when I was on the board was, all right, we have to build housing. We're going to build
affordable housing.
Yeah. The real estate business and build housing. So how does that work for your nonprofit?
Yeah, so the thing is that there are like obviously various dimensions to the whole homelessness issue. One is economic, and that's something which the government is going to have some programs to, combat. They're going to have to provide jobs to these people so that they can have gainful employment. And on the other side, there are like social variables, like one of them being, affordable housing. So there are part, and the third part is the mindset part. So the part that we're going to be sort of attempting to solve is the mindset part of it, because at least from Bright Now's perspective, uh, since we're already focused on coaching and mentoring, we want to coach both the families as well as the children about giving them permission to dream, and even instilling that boldness, if you will, to dream, because oftentimes people are seen as their circumstance and they can't, even themselves cannot see beyond their circumstance and feel that that defines them. So that's going to take some work to allow them to realize that there is a better way, and you don't need to either be out on the street begging, or you don't need to, be like doing some sort of like manual labor, if there is a better way. But so obviously some things would require some level of government support, because uh, it would mean that the government would need to, in a way, create some sort of a support system to take care of the family, where the family A has a place to live, has food to eat, the children have a school that they can go to, and fourthly, there should be some sort of a law that either discourages or just makes it, unlawful to be out on the street. So there are like multiple variables at play here, some of which, most of which, the government will have to sort of figure out, and maybe some of the governments have figured out in some degree, but maybe it's an execution issue, because maybe at the central level they have the plan, but they haven't been able to roll it out for whatever reason. And then on the other side, there's also the individual level, where the children, the parents need to realize that there is a better way, because sometimes it's a generational issue where the parent believes that the only way of life is by sending the kid out to beg because they're young and can beg. So, and when they were kids, that's what they did, and that's how it's been. So breaking that cycle is also going to take, like a lot of work and a lot of effort to be able to be successful in doing that. So that's kind of like, how we would, like attempt to, or that's how we would approach it.
I, you know, we had a couple of my friends who worked for this for Sophia. I think you may have heard of them. It's a nonprofit that helps American homeless people actually teach English to people overseas.
Hmm.
And they talk about how they're changing the mindset of people who are homeless in America
Right.
and helping them to see that there's a future, that they can take responsibility for their actions, that they can actually create an economic future for themselves. And they actually have prepared them to actually go and take jobs by giving them responsibilities that train them. So there's a lot of synergies,
Yeah.
similarities and synergies.
Yeah.
So you definitely should talk to my
Or
friend.
that Felipe?
Yes, Felipe. Yes,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
right. So it's the same mindset, just different ways of attacking the
Yeah.
same issues, the same problems, and you might be able to leverage each other's experiences.
Yeah.
So they actually develop a whole system to identify and then teach people with the greatest potential,
Right.
and develop a reward system. So I'm sure that there's some opportunities for
Sure. Yeah.
creative learning between your organization and your organization.
Yeah.
It sounds very exciting. So you have some mentors now. Like, what stage are you at right now
Yeah.
in
So
terms of
currently we're in the process of putting our advisory board together, and I was hoping that you would join our advisory board. Since you are very active in the nonprofit world, and like you said, you have like a lot of experience and background in dealing with stuff like this.
Well, actually, I don't know if I do, but I do understand a little bit about the challenges of homelessness in the first world. So I can imagine that it's escalated and at an even higher level in the third world.
Right.
And I'm sure that there's a lot of challenges that the people in Malawi have that the people in New York, where Care for the Homeless is located, um, they have more, I think, government support. And I do know the head of there's a national group um, organization that actually provides help healthcare services for homeless people all over the country. So I do know the head of that organization, and I can definitely connect you with him.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
He has actually done some work overseas, so he might also be able to help you, to think about it from the overseas,
Nice. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
right? So, um, a for me to do.
Yeah, thanks in advance, Betty. Thanks in advance. I knew that you were this well of vast information and vast, knowledge and stuff. So that's amazing, Betty. Thank you so much.
So how young or how old is is Bright
Right
Bright
now.
today, right now?
Right now. Yeah.
Did you just start this in the last quarter?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's fairly young. So I think it's about yeah, it's like maybe a month old. Maybe
Oh
I
wow,
I would need to
wow.
check. I would need to check my records to see when it was officially incorporated. I think it might have been incorporated in Feb.
Okay.
Uh, so yeah, about a month.
All
About
right. So you decided in the middle of a pandemic. Of course, it wasn't a pandemic then to start
yeah,
a nonprofit. Well, that's that's very audacious, very um I think positive of you to look into the bright future and say, hey, there's a lot more that can be done. Um, so what will you do in Nigeria? I'm just curious.
yeah.
You
It's
have
basically
Malawi and you have India, so you
yeah.
have
So
Nigerians.
yeah. So it's basic. So the reason why there's like this dual focus on India and Africa is because, well, India was like the first project that I heard about, when I was affiliated with another nonprofit. And that's something that we'll continue to support, through Bright Now. So and this other nonprofit is something that I had heard about actually last year, and even the year before last. But back then it was kind of just something that the person that runs it kind of told me in a very offhanded kind of way. So I didn't know her level of seriousness. I don't know whether she was being modest or what, but then when she told it to me again, and then when I learned of it again last year, like middle of last year, I was like, yeah, this sounds really interesting. I'd love to help. And that's when, so that's how the sort of India opportunity happened. And then there's another nonprofit that I am affiliated with called Kids Are Okay, which is headquartered in Sweden, and they have three divisions: Sweden, New York, and India. So what they do is they're about helping kids that live in slums in India through the empowerment of education. So that's what Kids Are Okay does, and they're one of our partners at Bright Now. So so again, so when it comes to India, there are like a few partners that have different things going on in India, and there might be like an interesting opportunity to see either if there's some sort of cross synergy possible between the NGOs, or even if that isn't possible, there might be a way for the NGOs to perhaps work together. Either by either sharing information or tactics or things like that. So that's that's as far as like how India might work. And as far as Africa, the reason why Africa is because I spoke at the United Nations, and it was linked to the United Nations mission to Nigeria, Gambia, and Malawi. It was those three missions that it was linked to in the United Nations. So because of that, there was that interest from those countries, and they reached out to me. So I said, since they kind of made the first move, I said, yeah, sure, absolutely, I would be honored and thrilled to serve the people of that country in this way. So that's the reason why there's the Africa opportunity, and why we'd want to embark on this in Africa. So that's why as of now it's India and Africa. Yes, I do know that this is a global phenomenon, unfortunately, and there are many people all over the world that need help, but it's kind of just we just have to go with what's in front of us. And right now there are these two opportunities. So these are the two opportunities that we're fielding, and sure, if there's an opportunity for us to serve people right here in New York or in the US, yeah, okay. Would we do it? Absolutely. Absolutely, in a heartbeat.
So are you also working on the business plans with the Malawi project as well? You mentioned you were working on the business plans for the Indian project.
Yeah, so as far as the NGO in India, which is Unbound Futures, yeah, we're helping them create their business plan. As far as Malawi goes, where it's not so much a business plan as it is you know uh, a strategy to solve this problem, and we're just trying to figure out operationally what are the different things that each partner would do. So it's kind of like it's in a, let's say, early proposal stage. It hasn't yet been shared with the government yet, so we don't know their initial response. But we do know, based on the initial discussion that we had, that they are very interested in this. Of course, now everyone is focused on COVID because it's this global problem that has just crept up and sprung up on everyone. So I know that everyone is focused on that. But once that gets taken care of, then people can resume their previous priorities. Um,
So tell me, do people in Malawi speak English?
yeah, they do.
Oh, all right, they do.
Yeah,
But they also speak another
yeah,
African
yeah. They
language.
would speak, whatever the language is, the local language there. But some of the most common languages spoken in Africa are English and French.
Okay, and in Malawi they speak English.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to the local Malawi language.
Language.
Yeah,
Okay, yes, because obviously if you're using volunteers from America, unless you are screening for people who can speak the local Malawi language, which might be only a few people, um, this being able to have these mentors speak in English would be of of great use.
Right, right, absolutely. So it's kind of like the assumption obviously is that either we'll be working with a team on the ground that could serve as some sort of a bridge or a liaison between the children and their families. So we would need that in any case to work with them because like one of the ways that it could work is that we could do it remotely, using technology like this, like Zoom, uh, as well as create resources where they could watch the videos and kind of be inspired and start that process of learning and enrichment and informing themselves of other ways of other perspectives which might benefit them. So those, operational details haven't yet been pinned down completely because it relies first of all on figuring out who the local partner will be and what that partner would do. So there are like several moving parts. So we're still in like early stages of putting that proposal together.
So I'm curious, what can people do now if they're interested in helping you?
Well, so right now, if they're interested, they could. One way could be they could agree to serve on our board, on our advisory board. That's one way. The other way that they could help is if they wanted to sign up to be a volunteer. That could be, another way. The third way could be if we are in the process of filing our 501(c)(3, application with the IRS. So once that happens we'll be 501(c)(3 certified. So once that happens, people could, if they wanted to make donations, they could. I mean, if they wanted to make donations now, they could as well. But I'm just saying, like, people usually, I think, make donations to 501(c)(3 uh, uh, organizations that have that 501(c)(3 status already. Like usually, I think. Um,
Yeah. So, do you have my notes on what it takes to file a to run a nonprofit here in New York City versus in New Jersey or Connecticut? Because New York City and New York State is one of the most complicated states with the highest requirements for any kind of filing. I assume you know that. Some lawyer probably should have told you that. If not,
well, I no, I didn't. I didn't.
oh. Okay, so I'm going to send you the information about the nonprofit and the nonprofit requirements for New York State,
Okay.
because you might decide you want to create a nonprofit in Connecticut or New Jersey or some other place if you haven't created a nonprofit yet. The other thing to think about is the IRS usually takes 6 months approximately to provide any kind of approval.
Right.
So during that time, there are organizations you can work with that are also nonprofits that act as an intermediary. So they can actually take the donations, for a fee, as you know, for a fee, they will potentially give you, I think, back 97 or 95% of what is donated to them, acting as if you will, like a credit card processor.
Okay.
So it's something else to know if you don't know that already, which you might have also known, but just
Well,
some
so
strategy.
right. Well, so as of now, the payment processing part, like if you click the donate now link on the website, it'll take you to like a PayPal page where people
Okay.
can donate that way.
Right. But what I'm saying is that instead of just going to PayPal and giving the money and not getting the tax status, because you were mentioning the tax
Right.
status,
Yeah.
that you could work with an organization to get the tax exemption for people.
Oh, gotcha, gotcha. Like an umbrella.
They can get the
Under
credit,
the-
yes.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
So it might be something you want to consider if you haven't done it yet.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea.
So I have to find that information too.
Nice.
Yeah, I forget where all of this was, but when we were talking about creating stage 2 startups, as a nonprofit, we went through looking at all of these different alternatives and, how do we get the donations and funding, stuff like that. So that's definitely something I would try to share with you. Um, so anything else that people need to do, myself included?
Um,
Besides being an advisor. So like, advice is pretty cheap. We all have a lot of time. Actually, I find it, do you find you have a lot of time, or it turns out there's like a zillion things to do?
right.
I don't know if you're finding that's true, but I'm finding there's a zillion things to do.
Yeah, there's like a certain dichotomy, if you will. On the one hand, you're trapped, but then on the other hand, you have all these other things to do. And then it's just a matter of should you do them, or which potentially might take your mind off the thing that you're trapped, or should you just wallow in that pity party of, oh my God, I'm trapped. Oh, life is over. This is like my worst life, whatever. These like first world problems that we're like dealing with. So yeah, I guess there's people have that choice that they can do either, or maybe do a little bit of both, whatever works for them. So yeah, I'm actually trying to stay away from the latter and do more of the former by actually taking things off of my to-do list. That's what I'm trying to do.
Okay, so I don't know if it's because your time is almost over, if we're on a short time frame, because I'm hearing a buzzer.
Oh
But
no, that's actually my notification. There's no like per se time limit on this call.
okay, so I'm just curious, how is your regular business going? Can you talk a little bit about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. So as far as the regular business goes, it's I was in the process of closing a really big deal, a big contract, and unfortunately that has been delayed because the client, not the client, but the one of the client's relatives has fallen sick
Oh,
with either corona or something related to corona. So that has been, I guess, very distracting to the client.
sure.
And that's all the client, I guess, is thinking about. But hopefully hopefully the client doesn't wait until all of this passes away to take action because, like, the client needs his reputation to be like salvaged because it's causing other complications for him. So hopefully that happens sooner. But aside from that, yeah, we actually have signed up several clients right now because the whole quarantine thing has created a very interesting business opportunity because if you look at the stock market as a metaphor, many of the regular businesses have, let's say, crashed or taken a nosedive. But the companies that haven't taken a nosedive are, in fact, the e-commerce companies like Amazon, eBay, Etsy, uh, etc. And those are all surging like crazy. So that actually tells us that right now is a great opportunity to invest in online advertising because everyone is, like I said, trapped at home and are pretty much spending all their time online, and which that behavior then makes them more agreeable, if you will, to be exposed to be more receptive to messages that come online. Obviously, provided that the messages are relevant and compelling and engaging, which is true not just for now, but for any time. But if that happens, then we found that people are responding extremely well to online advertising. Like for one health and wellness client, we generated as many as 30 warm leads for them in a single week with a very, very small budget. So that's something that we found, and for health and wellness as well as financial services. So, yeah, so as far as the question as to what could you do to help, if you know anyone any business owner or organization that wants to do any sort of lead generation, now's the best time to do it because we've seen crazy success with doing just that for clients in financial services and health and wellness. So, yeah.
So actually there have been good business opportunities. So has your staff or partners been affected in any way, or?
No, and in any case, our business model is that everyone works remote.
Okay.
So in a way, this hasn't really impacted operations, so to speak, because everyone is already home. It's just that they can't or let's say they're dissuaded from leaving their home and
Right.
going out and hanging out. So the hanging out part, obviously, that's been kind of restricted. So you cannot, let's say, go to a restaurant or a club or a pub or anything like that because they're all shut, or to the gym, unfortunately. Uh, but as far as like, things like going to Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks, I mean, I guess you technically could because they're still open for grab and go type stuff. You can't sit obviously because all the tables and chairs have been removed. I know this because when I went to the Dunkin' Donuts down the road from where I live, that's what I saw. So I assume that's the case in other Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks as well.
Are many of the Starbucks where I am they're totally closed.
Oh, they are. Okay.
Yes, apparently they are all told to stay home and they're all being paid. So I'm sure they're happy. They probably don't know for how long, but they're all staying home and being paid.
Oh, wow. Paid leave. Nice.
Paid leave, yes. So so then it sounds like business that in a way the coronavirus has actually helped your business.
Right.
Do you perceive any kind of downturn, or is it mostly, do you think it's going to continue in an upturn? It looks like.
Yeah, because I think now everyone knows that, at least from my perspective, now is the right time to build their pipeline for 2020 right now, since this is like a very unique opportunity where some business owners are in like, let's say, panic mode about what am I going to do. Other business owners like me see this as an opportunity and are taking action. So for the business owners that take action, they have the opportunity to build that pipeline tremendously to the extent of even taking care of the like 2020 completely. Even though we're in Q2, Q3, Q4, no problem. We can take care of both those quarters right now, including like Q2, if they, act immediately and take the action. Uh, so that's something that we're seeing. So if you happen to know anyone, either anyone who's like a financial planner, uh, if you know any financial planners that want to, you know, who can take on more clients, then yeah, any referrals there would be like hugely welcome. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think we have some financial planners in the stage two startups community.
Okay.
So one last question. I'm just curious, do you have any advice for business owners in general or business owners who are operating online? It sounds like you've actually shared a whole bunch of it. So if you want to
Yeah.
summarize anything.
Yeah. I think everything happens. So the thing about situations are you can either look at it as lemons or you can choose to look at it as lemonade. So when you choose to look at it as lemonade, you actually see the opportunity within. Now that does take a little bit of introspection and really taking a couple of steps back to really think and ponder as to how whatever is happening can serve you. So when you give yourself enough time to process that, you will see that opportunity. So the best advice I could give is to give yourself the time to like just step away from panicking for a moment and just stop to think about A, how can your business, now that this has happened, how can your business pivot to do business differently, either a different service or the same service but delivered in a different way. But you need to like think about that to figure it out. If you need help with any sort of like coaching, business coach, sure, you can reach out to me. I'm a manifestation coach. I'll be happy to talk to you. And yeah, and I would say that what's happening right now, while it is tremendously scary because of the obvious health risk and the fatalities that have been reported in the news, it's also an opportunity for business owners to really maybe rethink their business, which is a great time, as good a time as any. Now you're kind of forced to, but it maybe this was the right time for you to do that. So look at it as a, like a gift in disguise.